All right, just a quick video, I think. I wanted to talk about something where basically I have better angels of my nature, and I can kind of hold a tension between certain aspects of left and certain aspects of right, and find the of the antithesis and thesis kind of mentality when I try really hard, but I kind of have a default grumpy, don't like leftists kind of baseline. And what I want to say is that while we should strive to integrate, interlace, intersperse the fullness of the human condition in as honest and right, everything in its place and a place for everything as possible. Um, there's a reason why the hero's journey stories always have the hero encountering the fullness of the divine itself and then sort of coming back to normal life and so on. Now, if I'm on a hero's journey, then basically I've kind of this existential crisis guidance toolkit is my attempt to touch the divine or fullness of the human condition in an appropriate manner as possible. Um, but even I can't hold all of this together all the time fully. And even if I'm at my best, I can't do it fully. Um, so this is not me saying it's useless, but it's me saying sort of like you can't do all of it all the time, or you can't do all of it even most of the time, or something like that. It's kind of like if you know about berserkers or Dragon Ball Z Super Saiyan, then it's a bit like that in some sense, where it's like a exhausting transformation of an upper level that you can sometimes reach, sometimes on demand, sometimes not, depending on your level of development. But it's always going to be extra burn of energy and so on. And people are going to default to what their bodily structure and mental structures can hold consistently. But the goal is to challenge yourself over time so you get more strong mentally and so on to hold these complex understandings of the world and so on. So basically, and the thing is, you know, it's actually probably a bad thing to like think until your brain explodes and you get a migraine headache every day or something. Um, and it's unfair to expect someone to always do that every day and so on as well. So our prejudices and our biases and our favoritisms and bigotries and so on are kind of like a compromise for longevity or longevity of maintaining the state of mind with a minimally burn out experience. But there are also times that we kind of have to think extra hard, so to speak, or like use a model that is a little complicated compared to normal, but requires a lot of brain power and might hurt our head if we do it too long, and so on. And basically, I mentioned the Berserker and Super Saiyan, and the thing is, like, if you're Berserk, it means you're switched on to like like that's kind of what Super Saiyan is really. It's just Berserker without the losing your temper as hard um, and being stupid. And I'll just say Berserker or whatever right now. If you go berserk in the sense of like energy burn and so on, you know, even if it doesn't make you stupid, even if it makes you smart for some reason, you cannot hold it together forever. You know, worst case scenario basically is you, or a bad case scenario is you just collapse of exhaustion. You know, and the worst case scenario is you collapse of exhaustion so hard you frickin' die. And I think people have actually done that in the past at times and so on. Or like their heart explodes or something. Um, so you cannot necessarily hold your best angels of your nature if you want to be like a godliness or morality berserker, so to speak. Um, Even if you can break your limits, so to speak, limit break, to borrow Final Fantasy wording, um, you can't exist in that stage forever. It's a sort of once in a while thing. It's a very short term thing, and so on. And you might have to be in a situation. You might be in situations where you have to do that to be a good person or like succeed or something like that. At times, but you're going to default back into a more limited state, just so you can survive for the long term, basically. And one of the reasons why Christianity is so good is because it allows people to be relatively loose, while still challenging themselves a bit consistently. And maybe they have periods of serious testing, and then they have periods of dry seasons, of spiritual dryness, as it's called, like a desert, basically. Or they have like love bombing from God or something, you know, stuff like different. I mean, I'm not sure if I would use the term love bombing in the usual, like, malicious or subversive sense or manipulative sense. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, you get those rushes of, like, oh my god, God's totally on my side 100% right now, and, like, everything I'm doing is just wonderful, and I'm winning at everything, and everything's lovely, and so on. Um, Another phrase for this, with the mental state matching up with the like your thoughts and actions moving as one to success, is being in the zone or the Taoist flow. And that's another version of it. That's the non-angry version of Berserker or Super Saiyan and so on. Um, it's a heightened transition, but it's a little less demanding than Berserker. Um, so you can do it longer and be just as effective and so on. But if you could be a berserker in the flow as well, then you got like the basically that's what Whis, from Dragon Ball Super will be talking about, with the berserker being Super Saiyan and the Taoist flow being Ultra Instinct or Ultra Ego or something like that. To use a fictional metaphor, and it's you you do kind of gain permanent mental muscle by working yourself out, mentally and so on. Um, but at the same time, there's also always going to be a stage that's like heightened, that requires heightened effort and a lot of effort compared to normal, at least, and so on. You know, like your heart is beating from the time you're born till the time you die, basically. And when you're putting in a lot of exercise, mentally or physically, your heart rate goes up, And the point is to get your heart used to a slightly uh, to do things to make it so you can do things that are a bit harder more often, and so on, by working out your heart a little bit, maybe, or your not your nervous system, your blood circulation system, and so on, and burn energy and make your muscles break down and become more efficient, or like totally effective, more totally effective as muscles if you're like lifting weights to gain strength, so, right? But you don't want to work yourself to a heart attack, so to speak, and you can do something similar with mental states as well. It's not just like physical body; it's like mental state at least. You know, and what I want to say is personally, if it were up to me alone, I would be a very grumpy, angry person at the woke. Like in every situation, basically, at this point. Like, I am really very opinionated naturally. But with God's influence, the better angels of my nature take over somewhat, and I have to try to at least formulate in my videos something where they can have a part in the world as constructively as I can think of, um, without shutting them out, you know. And even though I don't personally like them, so my baseline is grumpy, opinionated, and I guess the left would call it bigoted. But with God's influence, I can kind of rise above and give them a position of respect and dignity, as long as they're not violating like serious wrongdoing stuff and so on. Even as I want to be a very right wing individual on my own, and that's a heightened state of awareness and fullness that I've been thinking about it, and I just cannot maintain very long. Um, my existential crisis guide and toolkit playlist is my attempt to provide some sort of understanding mutually and cooperation between left and right in various situations, while favoring the right wing's dominance and conformity, while expressing I desire a place for the left wing's exploration and diversity as well on the fringes, but still part of the pie of civilization. Not totally outcast, basically. Even if they're on the outer edges, they're not totally outcast, generally speaking. And they're like respected and given dignity as a human being, uh, and so on. For the most part, if you're doing something horrendous like being a child predator or something like that, then yeah, okay, death penalty and so on. But like, even then, you sort of give them a bit of dignity in the sense that like you recognize that they like I would argue personally that uh, there's a bullseye of selfishness or a bullseye of self-interest, and the bullseye of self-interest has a double bullseye of God in you, and the bullseye of selfishness has a double bullseye of like a demonic void, basically. And that's like a human level understanding of it, basically. And then the divine level is, no matter how small the double bullseye is, everyone's got God in them, so to speak, on some level. Or God through them, maybe, is a better way to put it. Even if they're not like actually divine in their heart necessarily, because nobody is like, And my personal heresy is that God will break you down until he hits the double bullseye, um, or the bullseye. I'm not sure which, but it'll break you down till your very core element of whatever's good about you at the most basic level, fundamental, and then build you back up the right way, even if you are like built up badly, so to speak, uh, from common understanding in this life and at the moment. So you might be able to be broken down and built up again in this life. You might be broken down and built up in the next life. But I think everyone's going to go through that process eventually at some point. Um, and the longer you put it off, and the worse you get, then the more painful the breaking down is going to be, generally speaking, I would argue. So it's best to get it over with rather than continue down the wrong path, so to speak, and so on. But this gives, but to bring it back to my original statement, the divine viewpoint is that everyone's got a core of something good in them, and God will break them down to that point and then build them back out from that properly, so to speak, from a human conception of properly. But the human level understanding consistently is some people are good and some people are evil at their core. And to give this to the leftists as an example that they can understand, Hitler was kind to animals. He was not kind to people. So God is going to break Hitler down and his soul until he gets to his kindness to animals and then build out from there. I don't know what Hassan Piker's example is because he's constantly calling for the death of and murder of other people and so on. And he's shocking, electrocuting dogs that have done nothing wrong to anyone else, and so on. There is definitely a certain skew and bias towards the right wing being better morally and learning these lessons better than the left. But I understand the left has some validity as well in certain aspects of their commentary and so on. Um, and what I'm trying to do here is describe something of a fuller picture, but also explain why people have their disagreements that are um, consistent, even if they could potentially rise above, and what it might feel like to rise above, and the reason also why people, even if they can exhibit moments and periods of time where they're super understanding and kind and so on, also have moments or extended periods of time where they're very grumpy and angry and bigoted or hateful or something like that. And it just stems from people's limitations as people, not God, basically, is the Christian interpretation of that or formulation of that. So, my suggestion is if you want a good society, it should be Christian nationalist in the Doug Wilson way, not whoever else's way, more or less. And I'm not saying that as it's perfect. I'm saying that as kind of like a rough position without wanting to hate the left right now. There are times when I do and I get grumpy easy and so on, but I mean, I'm trying to explain to the left why, like, one of the things that the left does that I don't like, for instance, as well, by the way, and this is something I think the left should understand because they do it plenty themselves, actually, is you get tired, you get frustrated, you get hungry, and you vent your frustrations and so on. And people can be angry in the moment and say things that are nasty, and then kind of calm down, and then oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, or something like that, and so on. And like the right can probably, I don't know. I think the left means the nasty stuff more often, but not entirely. And I think the right vents in frustration more often, but sometimes they mean the nasty thing too, or like there's a correlation to it. So it's slightly favored in one direction or the other, depending on left or right. But I'm trying to explain that it's also a universal thing that both parts happen, and greater awareness of that um, might actually kind of help people calm down a little bit and not hate each other as much, left or right.